Earlier this year, I posted polls to the Warframe forums and Reddit and asked fellow players simply what were their top 5 picks for each weapon type, primaries, secondaries, and melee weapons. These didn't have to be the most efficient, most played, most damaging, or just their favorites. It was simply their top 5 for whatever they wanted to play with. My personal goal was to figure out what was being played with the least. Here's why. Warframe is a game most often played around the mid-tier of the game's difficulty. Depending on your progression, this means facing enemies that are somewhere between level 25 to 45, give or take 5 levels. But what this allows for those of us who feel that variety is the spice of Warframe's life is that we don't always have to play with the most efficient, badass, end-all be-all weapons to enjoy our gameplay. My goal here in the 88th Armory is to show you some of those weapons you might have written off or haven't picked up in a long time, and to find builds for the mid-game that might possibly find their way into the endgame. I'm Scott from Ramble Entertainment, and this is Season 1 of the 88th Armory. So a couple of things before we get started with this episode 4 of the 88th Armory and talk about the Glaxion. This episode is posting only hours after I get done recording it. That's because the Quanta was my choice for this week, and of course the Quanta Vandal just happened to drop on PC from Barrow only the last time he was here, which means it's also coming in consoles. And I do think while the Quanta is actually still worthwhile, and I think it's underrated and underused because of the Quanta Vandal and people waiting on the Quanta Vandal, I don't think it's worth posting a video about the Quanta when the Quanta Vandal has just arrived into new hands. So the other thing I want to mention is, so there's 2 more things I want to mention. I want to mention that as I said, this video is posting super late after I get done recording it, and I think that is a signal to me that with the other videos that I'm working on, especially the longer ones posting late in the week, Thursdays and Fridays when I've been trying to post the 88th are the wrong days for it to land on, and I think I'm going to aim for Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Sunday, Monday. We shall see, but I'm going to play around with the date that it lands on, and so after I get done with this, I'm going to go record another 88th, or I'm going to at least get in-game footage for it and maybe record it tomorrow and have it post on one of the aforementioned days. Aside from that, last week I was talking about the Twin Gremlins, and I mentioned in that video that the Twin Gremlin, or that critical cannot hit on shields. That was wrong and corrected by these 2 forum goers. Thank you guys for your comments and helping me to also improve the forum posts. Crit can hit shields. You can prove this to yourself by going to the Simulacrum or going to a mission with a high-level enemy but few high-level enemies and just shoot with magnetic and critical, and you'll see the larger numbers. It's just they're harder to see, and that might be something we talk about in State of the Frame. Maybe something that could use some tweaks. We'll see. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into it with the Glaxion. So the Glaxion is a freeze weapon, a cold weapon, built in the Energy Lab from the dojo, or purchased with Platinum. And it fires a freeze ray, but what's really unique about this weapon is that no matter what you change its elementals to, it will always have this cold proc, so it continually tries to do this cold proc, which I find very interesting. Another interesting thing about it, less enjoyable, is it has this weird hitbox where instead of firing in a straight line beam, it wiggles. it just kind of waves all over the place, and that can be a bit hard to control. In my mind, for my builds, I have found a bit of a solution to that. So why don't we go ahead and look at the builds, or at least let's start with these base stats. So the beam has 30 meters, which in my mind is not bad at all. Again, we fight in a lot of enclosed spaces, not a lot of huge 100-meter sniping ranges. So 30 meters is just fine to me, and it is a weapon that really fights with ammo efficiency. Even when you don't have any additional speed on the weapon, it has bad ammo efficiency, and I do think there are two solutions to ammo efficiency that are in the game, or at least for PC in the game. So, like I said, let's go ahead and take a look at the builds. And actually, as we proceed, I just want to correct myself one more time. Just a second ago, I said that the Glaxion, no matter what your elemental no matter what you equip elementally, it still cools, and that's actually incorrect. I was tooling around with it earlier, and I love cold status, so like I had radiation and cold status, and it's awesome, but it's, in my mind, it's hard to abandon toxic or viral, combining the two because of their benefits. If you do radiation and toxic, you're basically covering most of the Grineer with additional damage, whether you're against alloy or ferret armor types. You gotta watch out for that ferret armor type, guys. Anyway, so yeah, like, I love cold, and I was tooling around with it, but what the Glaxion does is basically it freezes them on death, which is still a cool animation. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the build. So the first build that I usually talk about is Radiation and Viral, one of the more popular anti-Grineer builds. And I love this build, and even though I was playing with a magnetic and toxic build earlier on the Corpus footage, a lot of times I'm still going to take a radiation, viral, or even a corrosive, and in the Glaxion's case, a corrosive and blast build into a Corpus fight, because you just end up doing so much damage to the shields that you eat through the shields, and if you encounter a Bursa or you encounter more high-level units of Scrambus, you just either eat their health or you take off their armor, like with Oxium Ospreys. You can make sure they're dropping that Oxium. But let's take a look at these stats here. So again, with these beam weapons, when you're doing multi-shot and doing a lot of damage, and especially a lot of damage with a high fire rate, instead you're not seeing like a ton of numbers, you're just seeing 1 number, 2 number, 3 number. It just proceeds after one another, and I haven't done the math on it, but yeah, basically it's cumulative, and yeah, so with the Glaxion you'll see thousands of regular damage, and of course you can also combine this with the Adarza, as I've been mentioning this season. The Adarza goes well with any 2x crit multiplier weapon, with either a low crit chance or even a high crit chance, with those crit multipliers. As long as it's at a 2x base damage chance, I typically like to combine it with the Adarza as of late. So anyways, with such high status on this weapon and its status per second, I just really do like to lean more towards getting that viral, getting corrosive, and of course with Corpus you can go magnetic toxin, and making sure you're just ripping off that thing that protects them, high health, armor, or shields. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of these builds. So with some relic footage in the background, footage capturing some relics, grabbing some reactant, picking up some void traces, all them complicated terms for Warframe as of late, let's go ahead and take a look at our build for this weapon. So what I want to pull up is, what I start with is Shred. Shred is basically the mod that I feel makes this weapon more functional. It adds 30% fire rate, so again, within that box that the beam likes to kind of wave within, it just kind of likes to move a bit more sporadically than most. Again, we get the we get a really inaccurate weapon here when you especially add heavy caliber for that extra damage, but at the cost of accuracy. The beam likes to wave all over the place, so when you don't have any additional attack speed, it just kind of goes like this. Where am I going? This Warframe isn't going to control me. But when we add attack speed, that allows us to actually have a bit more predictability. Okay, it's just kind of going like this now instead of going really slow. But of course, adding Shred to an already ammo-inefficient weapon does cause problems. Now, even if... So, my primed ammo mutations have been at 6 for a very long time, and I've really just been stacking Endo, kind of considering what I want to do with it. What do I really want to upgrade next? And I really haven't planned on maxing out my ammo mutations yet, but tooling around with the Glaxion today, especially in a survival, I realized, well, maybe it's time to at least bump it up to an 8. Even bumping the prime ammo mutation up to an 8 really just isn't enough for the Glaxion, and here is where, as a PS4 primary player, I feel that I'm going to step into a bit of theory. I think with a rank 6 or 8 primed rifle ammo mutation combined with Carrier's new Precept ammo case should make the weapon ammo efficient. So basically we kind of return to what I was talking about on State of the Frame, looking for more utility out of Carrier's new Precept, allowing us to objectively say, I want to play with Glaxion on this mission, and thereby with primed rifle ammo mutation and Carrier, I believe the overlap, if there is overlap, should allow you to take this weapon on endless missions. The other option is just simply taking an efficient sidearm, which is typically what I do when I have a weapon that is ammo inefficient, and the Glaxion is admittedly quite ammo inefficient. Nevertheless, I believe it is still a powerful weapon to have when you want to go on a capture and exterminate these missions that aren't endless, and it's a fun weapon, and in my personal opinion, it's not entirely worth going all damage, and at the end what we will have is an all damage build. However, I think that having that consistent status, either tearing life off the enemy with viral procs constantly, and doing so with toxic and magnetic on Corpus, and doing so with corrosive and even blast on the corrosive blast build that we will see here in just a moment, that constant ability to control or remove portions of enemy armor, shields, health that keep them alive and sturdy is very helpful with this weapon, keeping it at 100%. So the other two builds are simply Magnetic and Toxin, or at least I go Magnetic and Toxin. You can go Gas. I'm not the biggest fan of going Gas, but you can. I prefer Magnetic and Toxin, even though you get very little Toxin damage out of the build. And of course the other side of that is Corrosive, and you can either go Corrosive and Cold, or here you see me convert to Corrosive and Blast for a damage build, or actually that's in the next portion. Basically, as I was saying, I was tooling around with Cold status. You can also add Cold status to Corrosive builds. Cold does do additional damage to your alloy. I think it's the alloy side of armor, which is helpful, again, against the Grenier if you want to go with Corrosive instead of Radiation as your primary dual element damage. And I think, so typically I'm a Radiation and Viral kind of guy. I'm a Radiation and Viral kind of guy. What kind of guy are you? Or ladies, what kind of ladies are you? And so when I typically go on missions, and don't expect to go very high up in level, whether it's endless or say on a sortie, I'll actually prefer Radiation and Viral. It's just who I am as a player. I think it feels better. I know that the math is actually on Corrosive's side. However, I feel, is a human thing, and I like to feel good, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so For the Glaxion, since you get that 100%, or at least I like to get that 100% status per second, I will preferably either go corrosive and blast or corrosive and cold. And that's something to think about with these weapons. Again, decision making. I love the opportunity to make different decisions instead of just go do this one thing all the time. So here, what we're going to conclude with in this final build is a all damage build, still utilizing shred, and no, technically it's not all damage. I don't think this weapon is worth 7 Forma, or at least not yet. Maybe something will come out of the index for the weapon. It is equipped on one of the index MOA heads, and almost all the weapons, I think all of the weapons out of Rathum got mods. Anyway, so the build that we want to conclude with, I'm a bit scatterbrained on this episode, probably because I posted a video every day this week, or almost every day. And so the build we want to conclude with is all damage. Basically, what we have here is all corrosive and blast. And again, I talked about this earlier, that even though blast has a lot of drawbacks on damage, it has the added enhancement of knocking your enemies down. And even at 72.8%, it's gonna consistently knock them down like it just did there to that silly heavy gunner. And I think that you can really get a lot of utility out of that ability to use blast on a highly consistent status weapon. And I think that it's not worth ignoring. However, going all damage, like we have seen on the Twin Gremlins, how going crit damage helps them to be more consistent with their ammo. Going all damage does not help the consistency of this weapon. Taking off a speed mod doesn't help with the consistency because of the slow waving beam that doesn't give a shit about what you think. And yeah, at the end of the day, really what matters is consistency, because if you're not being consistent or really getting consistent results, in my mind, you're not having as much fun with your variety. And that's what's important. And I really look forward to having the Vacuum Within on consoles this week to find out if this weapon can become more consistent in its ammo usage in combination with Carrier. That'll be very interesting for me. But I chose to do this video now because the Quanta Vandal came out on PC through the Void Trader. I was going to talk about the Quanta. Anywho, I hope you guys enjoyed looking at the Glaxion with me. Maybe you'll take it off its shelf and add it to your variety of weapons so you can take it out and have a bit of fun with that beam that doesn't give a shit about your opinion. Anywho, as I mentioned, I'm going to attempt to record some more in-game footage for the next weapon. Tonight, I'm going to attempt to record some footage between tonight and tomorrow for the next weapon, and I'm going to try and get that out between Tuesday and Wednesday. That might not happen. This is going to be a busy week with the War Within coming out. I'm happy. You guys stay tuned, and thank you very much for watching, and if you liked what I had to say here or show, do the thing.